So just remember this, that the freedom you're enjoying today was not free, it was paid for by the blood of the many who perished as we continue and we enjoy the freedom we have today.
We're getting older. The soldiers that fought that war, the women that lived through it, we're getting older. And we've got to find a way to keep it alive in the future generations.
You're growing up. Just learn to love your country enough to die for it. As an American, I have confidence in that you will be an American all your life. And what it takes to be an American is to never give up and to do everything you can to keep it where it is.
This is Private Jim Johnson, a hero. He doesn't know it yet. Heck, he just graduated from Beaumont High School, June 16, 1943. In 13 days, he will be drafted. Listen carefully as Mr. Johnson explains the Battle of the Bulge.
The Battle of the Bulge started on the 16th of December, 1944, with Hitler's objective of driving across Elsenborn Ridge to take the port of Antwerp. And if he could do that, he would capture the only active port that the Army had on the continent, and he would split the British and the American Army in two and want to negotiate a separate peace with Britain. Now, he launched the attack against 4 divisions, the 99th, the 106th, the 28th, and the 4th, and the 7th Armored. That was on a 60-mile front with 60,000 Americans. And he launched it with 3 German armies, the 6th, the 5th, and the 17th, that had 250,000 men. It was more than 4 to 1 when he launched the attack. And his goal was to be in Antwerp in 3 days. From that standpoint, the battle itself lasted 41 days in the worst winter in 50 years. 25 of them had below 0 temperatures. Before the battle was over, there were 32 infantry divisions and 12 armored divisions involved in the battle. From that standpoint, that was 600,000 Americans versus 400,000 Germans. They brought in additional reinforcements. The Army had 81,000 casualties in that battle. The Germans had something over 100,000. So it was a 1,000,000-man battle that lasted the 41 days in the Ardennes of Belgium and Luxembourg.
Stevens was only 19 when he was drafted. He found himself being trained in radio communications and also as a forward observer. He became part of the infamous Red Ball Express with thousands of troops in the area. Someone had to get supplies and food to them. Using treacherous roads littered with landmines, the famous Red Ball Express became a lifeline for our troops.
The Battle of Bulge area up in there, it was always snowing, the coldest weather they had witnessed in many, many years. And the area was saturated with Germans coming in, trying to get through the lines. And if I remember right, the first part of the area was something like 60-mile front, and they eventually, in about 2 weeks' time or so, had penetrated back into the Allied lines, approximately 50 or 60 miles. One of the things that really stands out in my mind was on December the 25th, which was Christmas. I was able to go back about a few miles for Christmas Eve service at one of the bombed out churches that they had there. There was no roof on it, but they had enough fellows there that we were able to have some kind of a Christmas Eve service. But the following day on Christmas, when the sun came out in the afternoon and the sky was just filled with B-17 bombers that were heading for some place to do their bombing. And at that time then, they were able to replace and drop the supplies to the Bastogne area, where the 101st Airborne was in there. And the 26th Division was instrumental, along with the 4th Armored, if I remember correctly, that was able to get in there and relieve the people at the Bastogne and give them some help. Part of my division and myself was involved in what was called the Red Ball Express. And we hauled equipment, gasoline, or shells, artillery, whatever the case might be, from the seaports back in at Cherbourg up to the front lines, around in Paris at that time, and then beyond Paris. The orders came down. We started packing up at like midnight, and in the morning we started moving out. Had to pack all of our equipment, and we drove then approximately 100 miles north. The divisions had made what was called like a 180-degree turn and headed north and up into the southern part of the Battle of Bulge area.
This is Millie Kynes. Millie was just married. 6 weeks later, her life was completely turned upside down. Her new husband was off to war. She found herself alone, with a little one on the way. Imagine just how scary this could be. And at a time, this should have been the happiest time in her life.
Life really changed then for everybody. It just, everybody in the United States pitched in. It seemed to bring the people together. They had bombed our shores, and America was mad. And all the young men were drafted, and the older men were volunteering, and this left a terrific manpower shortage. We were not only supplying our allies, our armed forces, but we were supplying all of our allies. So women who had never worked before, women before the war were usually pampered by their husbands. It was almost uncalled for a married woman to work. It was almost a disgrace to the husband. But that all changed because of the manpower shortage, and these women were called out to work in the airplane factories, the shipyards, making the tanks, climbing under trucks, transporting troop transport planes across the Atlantic. At first, they didn't think these delicate little pampered women could do it. But the slogan came out, "We can do it," and they proved themselves. They said the United States could have never won that war if it hadn't been for the backing of the women at that time. Another thing that changed for us was there was a shortage of everything that we took for granted. Flour, sugar, meat. We were issued ration books with stamps. Everybody had to have a ration book with stamps in order to get certain items, even shoes. We were asked to donate our pots and pans. There was pictures of pots and pans, stacks of them on all the street corners. Children went around with their coaster wagons collecting pots and pans and rubber tires. There was a shortage of rubber because of not getting any rubber from Japan. Women also worked in hospitals, where they read to a boy who had lost his sight, or wrote letters for one who had maybe lost his use of his hands, or perhaps just holding a dying boy's hand as he would call for his mama. My husband tells me that cry for mama echoed over the battlefield as his buddies lay dying and wounded.